almost midnight. Not the kind of midnight filled with noise or movement, but the kind that presses down on you. The kind where the world feels paused, holding its breath. Outside, the street was empty. A single streetlight flickered, casting long shadows across the quiet road. Inside a small apartment, a single dad sat alone on the couch. The television was off, but he hadn't noticed. His thoughts were louder than any sound. His shoulders were heavy, his body tired in a way that sleep alone could never fix. From the bedroom came the soft, steady breathing of his son. That sound meant safety. That sound meant purpose. That sound was the reason he kept going. Then knock. His head snapped up. Knock, knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks echoed through the apartment, cutting through the silence like a blade. His heart slammed against his chest. Midnight knocks were never normal. They were never friendly. It always meant something was wrong. He stayed still, hoping it was a mistake, hoping whoever it was would leave. Then the knock came again. Louder, firmer, more certain. The late-night knock sent fear rushing through his veins. His first thought wasn't about himself. It was about his son sleeping just a few feet away. Who would come at this hour? Police? Bad news? Someone angry? He stood slowly, every movement careful, as if fear itself might make noise. The floor creaked under his weight. He froze, listening for any sound from the bedroom. Nothing. His son was still asleep. The single dad swallowed hard and moved toward the door. His hand hovered over the handle, shaking. He whispered, barely audible, "Who could that be?" He had no idea that this moment, this single decision to open the door was about to turn his real life struggle into something he never expected. This single dad's story didn't begin at midnight. It began years earlier, the day his life split into. One moment, he was part of a family. The next, he was alone, holding the hand of a small boy who depended on him for everything. There was no guidebook for what came next. No pause button. Bills didn't stop. Life didn't wait. Every morning started before the sun rose. The alarm rang at 5, sometimes earlier. He dragged himself out of bed, muscles already aching from the day before. Coffee was weak, carefully measured so it would last through the week. He woke his son gently, helping him dress, tying small shoes with hands rough from work. "Dad, will you come home early today?" His son asked more than once. He smiled every time. "Soon," he said. Sometimes it was true. Most days, it wasn't. Work was long and unforgiving. He lifted, packed, moved, repeated. Overtime wasn't optional, it was survival. Rent. Food. School supplies. Gas. This was real life struggle, in its rawest form. Some days he skipped meals so his son could eat better. Some nights he sat at the table doing math, trying to decide which bill could wait another week. At work, he joked with coworkers. He smiled for his boss. He acted like everything was fine. At night, after bedtime stories and lights out, he sat alone in the dark. Thinking. Worrying. Trying to be strong. This wasn't just an emotional story. It was his everyday life. The knock came again. He took a breath and opened the door, and froze. Standing there was his boss. Suit pressed, shoes clean, expression calm but serious. The single dad felt his stomach drop instantly. "Sir?" he said quietly, "is everything okay?" Inside his head, panic exploded. Was he late too many times? Did overtime cost too much? Was he about to lose the one thing holding his life together? Boss surprises employee moments usually didn't end well. "I'm sorry to come this late," the boss said. "I didn't know another way." The dad stepped aside, his hands trembling. "Please, come in." They stood in the small living room. The boss looked around the worn couch, the second-hand table, the quiet evidence of a life stretched thin. "I won't take much of your time," the boss said. They sat down. The silence felt heavy. The single dad waited, his chest tight, his thoughts racing. This late-night knock had turned into a moment of fear and uncertainty he couldn't escape. They moved to the small kitchen table. The boss placed an envelope on the table, but didn't push it forward. "I've been watching you," he said. "You're always early, always the last to leave." The single dad nodded slowly, unsure where this was going. "I asked around," the boss continued. "I learned about your situation, about raising your son alone." The dad's chest tightened. "I don't want sympathy," he said. "I just want to work." The boss shook his head. "This isn't sympathy." He slid the envelope forward. Inside wasn't just money. It was relief.help, a chance to breathe. "This is help," the boss said quietly, "because no one should carry this much alone." The single dad broke. Tears came without warning. Years of pressure fell away in silence. This unexpected kindness story wasn't loud or dramatic. It was human. That night didn't magically fix everything. Life didn't suddenly become easy. But it changed enough. Enough to sleep. Enough to breathe. Enough to hope. The single dad woke up the next morning feeling lighter. His problems were still there, but so was the reminder that kindness still existed. This inspirational real story was never meant for headlines. Just a reminder that real-life struggle doesn't always end alone. That help can arrive when you least expect it. This wasn't just a single dad story. It became a heartwarming story. A feel-good story 2025 truly needed. Sometimes help comes quietly. Sometimes at midnight. Have you ever experienced unexpected kindness when you needed it most? Share your story in the comments. The boss didn't stay long. He stood up quietly, straightened his jacket, and looked once more around the small apartment. "Take care of your son," he said. "That's the most important job there is." The door closed. The single dad stood still for a long moment, listening to the silence return. Only then did he sit down. He placed the envelope back on the table and stared at it as if it might disappear. His hands were still shaking. Not from fear this time, from release. For years, his life had been one long stretch of holding things together just enough so they wouldn't fall apart. Tonight, for the first time, he felt something different. He felt seen. He leaned back in the chair and covered his face with his hands. The tears came again. Slower this time. Quiet tears. The kind you cry when no one is watching. This emotional story wasn't about money. It was about dignity. The next morning came early, but it felt different. Sunlight slipped through the thin curtains, landing softly on the wall. The single dad woke up before his alarm, something that hadn't happened in years. For a moment, he forgot. Then he remembered. The knock, the envelope, the kindness. He stood and walked to his son's room. His son was curled up in his blankets, peaceful. The dad smiled. He packed breakfast without rushing. He didn't check the clock every minute. He didn't feel that familiar tightness in his chest. At school drop-off, his son hugged him a little longer than usual. "Dad," his son said, "you look happy today." The single dad swallowed hard. "Yeah," he said softly. "I think I am." This heartwarming story continued not in big moments but in small ones. Work was still work. The machines were loud. The hours were long. But something had changed. When the boss walked past, he didn't just nod. He stopped. "How's your son?" he asked. The single dad answered honestly. "Good," he said. "Thank you." That was all. No big conversation. No spotlight, just respect. This boss surprises employee moment didn't turn into favoritism. It turned into humanity. Others noticed, too. The single dad stood a little taller. He worked with a steadier rhythm for the first time. He wasn't working only from fear. He was working with hope. Late that night, after his son was asleep again, the single dad sat in the same spot where he had been the night before. Same couch, same silence, but a completely different feeling. He thought about how close he had been to breaking, how many nights he had prayed quietly for help without knowing where it could come from. This inspirational real story reminded him of something important. Kindness doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it arrives with 3 slow knocks at midnight. This single dad's story is shared not for pity, but for hope, because real life struggle exists everywhere, and so does kindness. This emotional story became a heartwarming story because one person chose to act. A boss, a knock, a moment. This wasn't just a real life surprise. It was a reminder that even on the hardest nights, someone may still be willing to knock. Have you ever experienced unexpected kindness when you needed it most? Your story might be someone else's hope.